You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you John Mulaney, The Top Part, one of my favorite albums of all time. And I say album specifically because comedy album is kind of a thing of the past. Now everyone puts out specials, which is just, there's a lot of talk now, people saying like a special isn't special anymore because everyone just puts them on YouTube. There's no, gatekeepers for it. An HBO special is actually probably now less valuable than a YouTube special when you consider how many eyeballs get on it and everything like that. So people say specials are less special now, but it's really just the natural progression of technology, where back in the day, what everyone had was an album, just a CD that you put in your car, or a tape even further back, or a record, if you go back to the likes of Bob Newhart. So, you don't get that anymore, but there is something nice about the feel of it. Now you get a lot of comedians putting vinyls out. I think Ari Shaffir might have just put his double negative special on vinyl. You get comics doing that because there is a nice nostalgia to it. And the way John Mulaney recorded this album, I think there's like an old school comedy feel to it. He's kind of got an old school feel to it. And we got a suggestion recently, I think after we did the Chris Rock special, someone said you got to cover one of the John Mulaney, like New in Town, or I'm all verklempt today, I'm sorry. New in Town or Kid Gorgeous or one of those. And I said, well, if we're going to do any Mulaney, we should start at the beginning. So I think The Top Part is great. I remember discovering it on Pandora years ago when I found a lot of different comedians. So we will dive into that today. Also, shout out to Craig, who is playing through. Craig's child is gasping for air in the other room, taking his final breaths. And Craig says, the people need to know what Mike thinks of this album. So shout out to him. Go to verygoodshow.org and support this man who is letting his kid die for us today. We appreciate it.
Taking him to the doctor after this.
You can wait, kid. John Mulaney wrote some zingers. We got to talk about him.
And who knew what his life would have led to when you look at the picture from this album art?
He was just an innocent boy back in the day, you know?
Innocent boy.
He certainly was. Well, that's another interesting thing is John Mulaney very early on pretty much told us who he was, which we'll get into. But first, I want to let you guys know who we are. You should go to blindmike.net and discover us a little more if you haven't already. We have a whole lot. We've done a bunch of why. It dawned on me the other day. We've done like 125, 130 episodes of Why You Laughing or something.
Oh, wow.
Because I think someone said like, oh, we did the Stuttering John episode, and people were like, oh, another Stuttering John episode. I was like, it's 2 out of 130. So go through the archives. Watch Newhart and Fred Willard. No one watches those episodes. So you want me to really get into the nitty gritty, then start supporting those episodes.
That's right.
But no, go through the whole archives, as well as Blind Mike Project, Who Are These Socials, that I do every Thursday at 6 with Carl on the Who Are These Podcasts YouTube channel. The links for all of those podcasts are at blindmike.net, so support all of those wherever you get podcasts. If you are watching on YouTube and you want to, like I said, those older episodes, this episode, whatever one you're watching, if you think more people should find it, if you think we did a good job, if you like it and want to spread the word, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. All that helps more people find our channel. So please do that if you think it's worth it. And then you can go even above and beyond and become a member for as little as $5 a month on Patreon or YouTube. Become a YouTube member, become a Patreon member, whichever platform you use, and you get early access and bonus content. So hit up Patreon and YouTube memberships as well. Blindmike.net is where you get all those links. We appreciate you. Thank you, guys. So John Mulaney is a guy. It's interesting when a comedian catches on with a certain audience, because I think Mulaney has gotten popular, and Bo Burnham has this a little bit too, where they got popular with particularly young, like, girls, or young people in general. But like, if you talk to a young girl, if they like one comedian, it's probably John Mulaney or Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham, John Mulaney, Chris D'Elia.
For various reasons. But the girls who like comedy go to John Mulaney. But that almost puts a like stigma on them for some reason, like they're Dane Cook or something, you know, like it puts this weird label on them in comedy circles. I feel like now I think most people respect John Mulaney, but I don't know that he gets quite the respect that he deserves, because I think he's one of the true great pure stand-ups of his generation. I think that's on display in the top part here. So I say we dive into it. What do you say?
Yeah, sure. Dive into the bottle. This is about drinking.
Yeah, so I mean, right out of the gate, John Mulaney told us, we all said, like, oh, he wears a suit and he's a snazzy young boy. He can't do anything wrong. But literally right out of the gate, he's like, I was a fucking booze bag.
All right, let's do this. Thank you for coming to the Saturday show. I'm very glad you're here. I love coming out to clubs and bars on the weekends because nowadays, like, every bar will bust out some crazy drink special, you know? You'll see them advertised. And honestly, most of them are okay, the ones around. They'll be like, bucket of beers or ladies drink free. But then sometimes I'll hear about a drink special that sounds like borderline dangerous. Like, my friend will call me up and be like, man, we gotta go to O'Hallogan's tonight. It is nickel shot night. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll die if we go to O'Hallogan's. Nickel shot night should be illegal. You know what I used to do, San Francisco? I used to black out drinking every night of the week. That's absolutely true. I used to do that every night. For those of you that don't know what that is, blacking out is when you drink so much that your brain goes to sleep, but your body gets all Eye of the Tiger and soldiers on.
And that was a joke, by the way, that a lot of people accused Amy Schumer of stealing from him. Fun fact. I think it's more parallel thinking, because David Tell also has a joke where he goes, yeah, you guys ever black out, or as I call it, time travel? Right. So I think it's just a kind of general observation about blacking out. But a lot of people did say that Schumer stole that from John Mulaney. But it is funny to look back at Mulaney's career and, like, right out of the gate, like his, not even his special, his album, his best album, he opens with, I used to black out every night. And then when we went to rehab, people are like, John Mulaney? What are you talking about?
One of these days, we're gonna get you to admit Schumer stole something. I don't know what it's gonna be, but we'll get it.
Well, go listen to the joke stealing episode, guys. I don't want to relitigate it.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise, I knew he was a drinker, but like the cocaine and all that, I was like, Jesus.
Well, he also has a joke in a different special where he talks about getting a doctor to prescribe him Xanax. He goes, a lie for drugs, like a crime.
That's right.
The reason I like going back and listening to some people's early stuff is because they're not doing what I call, and I don't mean this in a degrading way. I don't think I said that word right, but whatever. Degrading. Did I say it right? Who cares? It's not a language show. It's a comedy show.
Laugh at it.
Mulaney's not doing like an impression of himself yet.
Right. Like Chris Rock.
Like Chris Rock. Yeah, that's who I was trying to think of who we mentioned that with. Yeah, like Chris Rock. And I don't even think it's purposeful. I think Mulaney, like, now he's known for a certain cadence, and he even jokes about that in his latest special, Baby J. But here he's a little more laid back, and he started noticing things. Like, if you watch Kyle Dunnigan's impression of him, that's kind of what John Mulaney is now. Like, like a crime. That's like kind of a more theatrical way of talking. He's a little more relaxed in this, which I kind of like. Now, it works differently too. Like, if you go back and watch early Louis or early Doug Stanhope, those are the two I recommend if you can find their real early stuff. If you just watch, you'd be like, this guy's a hack. this guy will never be anything. So it is kind of cool to go back and watch some of that early stuff. That'd be good if I can find enough early Stanhope. That might be a good episode to do at some point. But
next we have him talking about money.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, it was always weird when I would go out for the night with like some money, and black out and wake up with no money. It was even weirder, though, when I would go out for the night with some money, black out, and wake up with more money. Because that means that I earned money. That means that I traded goods and or services.
Mulaney's, I think I've done that in college where I've woke up, I thought I had $5 in my wallet, and suddenly I've got a 20 in there or something like that after blacking out. But this is where Mulaney's an interesting guy, and there's not a lot of guys like this in the history of comedy, where Mulaney was good enough at a young age that he was able to grow with his audience, and Bo Burnham, same thing. And I think now you're seeing Shane Gillis kind of have that, where they were good young enough that their audience is going to relate to them all the way through, whereas a lot of young comics are basically trying to do an impression of older comics. Or maybe they just don't have life experience, whatever. And what's interesting about Mulaney is he comes from a very wealthy family. Like he was very well off. He went to Georgetown, I think, became friends with Nick Kroll and Mike Birbiglia. Like he was successful pretty quickly. But I think because of his addictions, not saying if you want to be a comic, you should go out and develop a drug habit, but because of his addictions, I do think he lived enough of a life where he was able to relate to a young audience very quickly. And he was just polished enough. Like you hear how good and how tight this special is. He's only 26 here, I want to say, 27.
Right.
So
Eddie
like,
Murphy got stuck with it.
yeah. Like we always say when we talk about these younger guys, very few prodigies, if you will, in comedy, where like a lot of guys don't find success, till deep into their 40s. I mean, like Rodney Dangerfield is the classic example of into his 50s. But like, Bill Burr, Louis C.K. didn't really find their audience that they have now until they were in their 40s. And I think that's pretty commonplace in comedy. So it's impressive how young Mulaney was able to like relate to an audience.
As they say, cocaine puts hair on your chest.
That's very true. Yeah.
Next, we have him talking about the subway.
Okay, so this is again like and a lot of comics tell like New York centric jokes that might not hit everywhere in the country, but if you're good enough like this, like in Kansas, you probably can't relate to waiting for the subway, but Mulaney does it and finds an angle on it that you can relate to no matter where you grew up.
I've lived in New York City now for a few years, and I have a new phenomenon in my life where late at night on the street, women will see me as a threat. That is funny, yeah. That is silly. It's weird, too, because, like, I'm still afraid of being kidnapped. But I'll give you the best example of this. A couple of months ago, I was at a subway station at 2 o'clock in the morning, all right? And I'm changing between trains, 2 o'clock in the morning, and at this subway station, you have to like walk down this long hallway in order to change trains. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's just me and this woman, and we're walking down the hallway. She's walking a few yards ahead of me, but she keeps giving me like the over the shoulder, like that, And then she starts to pick up the pace, like she starts to walk a lot faster. So I think, oh, she must hear the train coming. Or maybe she feels it in her feet, like a Native American in a movie.
Well, pause one real quick.
Sprint down the...
That's just the thing Mulaney's great at, is finding that second example. Like,
yeah.
He has tremendous tags that are often better than the joke itself, where he has like his points of reference are great in pretty much every special he's done. He's broken down like a movie or things like that, where his spin on things. And it's interesting that his show wasn't successful, because in every album or special that he's done, he paints such a picture. Like you can imagine this lady in the subway running away from him. He's great at painting his surroundings.
Hallway at her, and she looks back and she's like, ah! And then she gives chase, so now we're booking it down the corridor at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm gaining on her. And we're getting to the end of the hallway, and she starts to go into that like dead end shuffle, you know, that women do when you chase them. And I'm almost there. I'm almost at her, and then it dawns on me. Oh, she's running from me. Because in her eyes, I'm an adult. And adults rape each other. Kind of a lot.
He's got such a boyish quality to him that is essentially a rape joke.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like it feels like you could do that on NBC. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like that at all. And it's like that's what Seinfeld was great at because you know, Jerry did his thing a couple weeks ago where he basically said you can't make sitcoms the same way. And everyone came out and said, like, Jerry's the cleanest comic there is. What does he know? Why is he the one saying this? And then when you think about it, like, there are, like, basically rape jokes in Seinfeld and masturbation jokes and racial stuff. But Jerry found a way to do it where it doesn't even pop into your mind as that, you know?
Jerry or Larry?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm partial to Larry. Yeah, and if you watch Curb, probably a little more Larry, I think. But if you watch Curb and then Unfrosted, probably Larry. But you see my point, though. That Mulaney has that where he basically just told a rape joke. And we're all like, oh, John, you rascal.
Silly goose.
Because he's a cute kid and he wears a suit, you know? And he has, like, that delivery that he has, because he delivers it in a way, in a bunch of different jokes. Again, I think you kind of see, his specials are, like, formulaic in a way, where there are certain little things you can expect. And one of them is that kind of throwaway line where he says something absurd, but in a matter-of-fact way, like, you know how women do when you chase them? You know how you talk to your grandma? That sort of shit Mulaney is like known for, but it's so part of his identity that now you're almost looking for it.
It's almost like he's aloof, kind of.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But yeah, he was able to build, and I think that's where you can tell a guy that like really loves comedy is at a very early age. He was kind of able to craft a persona that lent itself to appealing to an audience in stand-up.
Next, we have him talking about New Driver.
Oh, yeah, so this is one of my favorite stories in any one of his, and it again goes back to him painting a picture where you could just see this as a sketch or something. But John didn't have his license until later in life, very recently in life, and this is him talking about that experience.
I did the whole drive in one night, so it was 3 hours one way and 3 hours back. So I got back to my street at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I start to parallel park about 3 a.m. I'm done about 3:20, and I get out of the car. And there's this guy standing there on the sidewalk next to my car, and I should say also, he's not like old or sick or anything like that. He's just like a young guy in a suit with his shirt open, and he's standing there staring at me, and he goes, "Excuse me, are you Polish?" And I said, "No, actually, I'm Irish and French." Like he and I are going to have a chat or something. He starts to open the back door to my car and he goes, "Please, drive me 3 blocks. Drive me 3 blocks to Greenpoint Avenue. Drive me 3 blocks." And I said, no. No. And he kept opening the door and he kept going, "Please, I am so tired." And I said, "You don't understand. I'm not a taxi driver," which I have never had to yell at anybody before. But then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I just got my license a couple months ago. Like, is this something that happens? Some rule they didn't teach us? Like if you're on the street at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're not Polish, you may have to drive a guy a few blocks. Or worse yet, was it going to be one of those like street smarts things where the next day I come out and like my car is like sawed in half and there's some guy standing there like, hey, what happened to your car? And I'm like, I don't know. I was parking last night and this guy was standing there and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Did he ask if you were Polish? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you got to give those guys a ride, kid. Welcome to Brooklyn.
He's so good, and Mulaney's a rare guy that I think was actually benefited by being raised on television. Like a lot of his reference points seem like a kid that just sat in front of the TV after school every day and everything like that, because he paints a picture so well and is able to use like old sitcom tropes and different things like that. Now, I think it hurt him in his TV writing because his sitcom was basically, it felt too much like a Seinfeld complete ripoff.
Yes.
So I think it hurt him there, but in his stand-up, you get more of what he's doing and what he's going for. Then I think it really is to his benefit because, like I said, he's painting such a picture. Now, one thing that did annoy me is he just did a great interview with Letterman, that Letterman series on Netflix. My Next Guest Needs No Introduction, I think it's called.
Yep.
Mulaney's episode was great. But Letterman tells him, I don't want to butcher the joke or anything, but Letterman tells him this premise of a joke that he thought of. He's like, I knew there was something there, and I thought of this in 1971 or whatever it was. And Mulaney tells him, like, oh, well, this is all I would do, and tells him how he would craft a joke. And I was like, oh, God, it felt like a guy showing his magic trick. I was like, you motherfucker, you just, you ruined the whole process for me. But it's like, oh, yeah, he really has it down. He knows when he's presented a situation, well, this is how I would go about making this funny. Like, inherently, a guy saying, hey, drive me 3 blocks, and it just being a misunderstanding on the street isn't necessarily funny. But Mulaney makes it into a more grandiose story. Like, well, what if this happened?
Well, we have Ray.
Oh, I just like this in honor of my guy, Ray Charles. He's talking about the Jamie Foxx film Ray, and also found a very funny angle on this.
I wanted to tell you this is one of the best dates I ever went on. I'll never forget it. I took this girl a few years ago to see that Jamie Foxx movie Ray. Do you remember Ray? And we were walking out of the movie theater, and I said to the girl, "Hey, what'd you think of the movie?" And she said, "I thought it was a little too dramatic. I didn't need the whole little brother dying thing." Neither did Ray Charles. But he got it all the same. He could have totally done without that.
I just love his delivery so much. Neither did, but he got it all the same. His delivery is, I just love it so much. Like, it really, for whatever reason, speaks to me. But also he breaks down, like, human relations very well. Like, you know, the girl that he's talking about. You know, he's very good at getting you to totally relate to the circumstance that he's in. And I love his take on movies in general. Like, he has bits about where he breaks down Scarface. He has a great bit in The Comeback Kid, I believe it is, where he does a whole analysis of the Back to the Future franchise. It's brilliantly done. He's pitching Back to the Future, basically, to studio executives and showing how ridiculous it would be if you just presented the premise of that movie. So he's great at that, and that's, again, where I say, like, a kid being raised on just pop culture, being able to, you know, put it to good use.
Next, he's going to get into politics a little bit here. He's going to start with the economy.
This is exactly how I felt. Again, I was probably just the right age when I found this bit where I was like, I know I'm supposed to be an adult, but this spoke to me perfectly.
I've been trying to follow the news more this year. I've been trying to be much more involved with the news. You know, I read that this week, over 2 days, the Dow Jones dropped 929 points. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is to not know what that means. It's getting embarrassing when there's too much financial news. It gets real embarrassing. At this point, like when I'm watching CNBC, I almost feel like I'm a kid again, and I'm like listening to my parents talk about me in front of me. And I don't know what the fuck they're saying, but I know that it's gonna affect me. You know, they're like, I think someone needs to go to BED. And I'm like, I don't know what this BED shit is. I just know I'm going to get screwed.
That reminds me, he's got a Reagan quality to him, where he is perfectly able to encapsulate everyone's childhood. You know what I mean? Like, right. Where it doesn't really matter what background you came from for his jokes, for you to be like, oh, I get that. I had the same type of thought when I was a kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
This album in particular reminded me a lot of young Brian Regan. But it's, yeah, like, I invest in the stock market now, and I have a vague idea of what it means when the Dow Jones is down, but not really. Like, I couldn't explain it to a class or anything.
Yeah. Dow Jones is down. Ah, fuck.
I know it's bad when it's down and it's good when it's up. That's about the gist of it.
Well, explain it to me. It's like, I don't fucking know.
It's just it's no good, man.
it's bad. But here he is talking about Trump.
There are a few things where I think any good comedian has this instances where it looks like they're very prescient, like they can almost predict the future. And him calling Donald Trump very early on. This is 20. I should have look up the year of the top part. I can't believe I didn't do that before the show. I think it's like 2009, 2010. But this is him basically forecasting what Donald Trump had in store.
2009.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I saw a class advertised where you can learn how to get rich now from Donald Trump. He will teach you. He has an online college. He will show you his methods of getting rich. And he would know, wouldn't he? Trump would know, because he is a very rich man. In fact, to me, at this point, like, Donald Trump is not just a rich man. Like, Donald Trump is almost like what a hobo imagines a rich man to be. It's like years ago, Trump was walking through an alley and he heard some guy just like, oh boy, as soon as my number comes in, I'm gonna put up tall buildings with my name on them. I'll have fine golden hair and a TV show where I fire people with my children. And Trump was like, that is how I will live my life. Thank you, hobo, for that life plan. I bet you when Donald Trump makes a decision, he thinks to himself, what would a cartoon rich person do?
No, it was probably very easy to come to that conclusion in like 2016 to arrive at a bit like that. But in 2009, that's really impressive that he was able because Trump is the perfect, like, the guy that, you know, cancels Christmas and Frosty the Snowman or something. Like, he is the perfect stereotype for that. And Mulaney called it years before. I mean, I know Trump was very famous for many years before that.
Everyone liked him at that point still. Right.
Yeah. So it's funnier to come to that conclusion then.
But here he's talking about his parents.
Yeah. So Mulaney and again, good comics, a lot of them kind of develop these characters that you feel like you know in their act. And Mulaney's parents have kind of become that for him. Like, you know that, particularly his dad, like, you know the type of guy his dad is, especially from jokes in The Comeback Kid. But this is the early stages of that.
I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. My parents still live there. Yes, it's the best. It's the best. They still live there. My parents have been married for 34 years now. But my dad will still do this thing. We've been married 34 years. But he'll try and, like, sell us on our mom still. Like, I'll just be sitting there and my dad will lean in and be like, hey, you know who's a great lady? Your mother. It's like, yeah, we're all on board. We all love mom. You don't have to advertise for her. Though it'd be weirder, I guess, if you named someone else. He was like, hey, you know who's a great lady? Whoopi Goldberg.
I know I keep saying it, but it's just like that. I could feel, not that that's the thing, is like my dad wouldn't say that to me. I'd say quite the opposite, in fact. But I understand who he's talking about. Does that make sense?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and like, there's a lot of great, him talking about his dad. Another one of his great throwaway lines is he tells some story where his dad's an asshole. And he goes, none of us really know our fathers. Anyways. Like, he has these great little throwaway lines that he always tosses in. It's one of his strong suits, in my opinion.
But he's going to get religious here and talk about the Bible.
That's another, again, if you talk about the John Mulaney formula, he talks about the Bible in a way that, again, is very relatable, and I don't think polarizing at all. But this is kind of like I was talking about with movies, and what he did with like Back to the Future, where he's able to take a story and break it down in such a hilarious way.
So you'd learn a Bible story like backwards and forwards, and then we'd like present on them at the end of the week. And so a lot of them are still burned into my brain, you know. Also, there's like a lot of weird stuff going on in there, like the story of King Solomon and the baby. Do you guys remember that one? If you don't, I'll take you through the details. So in the Bible, King Solomon, he's like the wise king of Israel. And these two women bring him a baby. And they say, King Solomon, we both claim that this is our baby. What are you going to do? And Solomon says, well, we will cut the baby down the middle. And the first woman says, oh, okay. And the other woman says, no, don't cut the baby down the middle. And King Solomon says to her, ha, ha, ha. Congratulations. You have proven yourself to be the real mother. A couple things with that.
Hold on real quick. One thing that's an impressive thing to me on albums is when there's a pause and we don't get any visual cues, and I particularly appreciate this, being someone who can't see, but like we're not getting any visual cues, yet you understand what the audience is seeing. You know what I mean? Like, that's an impressive skill to me, where you can feel through the audio what he's doing visually.
Who is this first woman that's like, yeah, cut the baby in half? That sounds like a good idea. Like, what kind of awful bitch has just stolen a baby? She stole a baby. And then the first time she's asked about it, she's like, look, I'll take what I can get. Can I get the legs? I'll take the legs. She can have the top part.
Hey, that's where we got the name.
She's so fucked up that she calls the head the top part.
Pause again. Sorry. That's one thing. I go back and forth on. I like the idea of naming a special after a joke.
Mm-hmm.
To me, in certain instances, and I don't know that this is one of them necessarily, it kind of ruins that joke for me. Because instead of like laughing, you're like, oh, they named it that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's almost it's very slight, but it's almost a little distraction that I feel is unnecessary. You know.
Mm.
Secondly, that he knew it was the real mother because she knows not to cut a baby in half. Yeah, I think most people would come to that conclusion. Like, even if I was just like walking down the street and there was someone about to saw a child in half, I would be like, hey, why don't you not do that? And they'd be like, oh, you must be the father. Congratulations. You have passed my test.
So, you know, so you can see when put like that why it would be so absurd, I suppose. But he is like, I'm trying to think of, like, I consider Jim Jeffries a great storyteller, or he was. particularly in his drinking days.
That's true.
Great storyteller. Mulaney is a guy who's, aside from Baby J, he's not always telling stories from his personal life. And even when he is, there's an element of like the Chappelle baby stand on the corner story where you're not, it doesn't feel like 100% real necessarily. And even when he's doing that, he is a great storyteller. You know what I mean? Like he's telling the Bible's story here, essentially, but he's able to put the Mulaney twist on it where you're like, fuck, this guy can spin a yarn.
Yes. I was thinking while the rest of that was playing about specials and their titles and all that.
Yeah.
And like Gaffigan is good at it. Like Gaffigan, Burr, Louis, they all name their special just something random for the most part.
Burr's might be the best. Let It Go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you feel that way. And You People Are All the Same. Great. Like that feels like a Bill Burr special.
Right. And then you watch and that never comes up.
Right, exactly. And I even think there's something to be said for, Shane Gillis live in Austin or Brian Regan live. One of the there's something nice about that too, where it feels
I like live and wherever.
Yeah, like it feels like this is important.
Right.
I don't know why, but Chris Rock's another Bigger and Blacker and Bring the Pain aren't references from the special. It's Chris Rock basically telling you this is what to expect in here.
Correct. And then like Shane's last special was The Beautiful Dogs, which is a funny name, but then you hear this.
Well, I'll tell you why I don't mind that one though. I feel like, I don't know, this might be putting too much on it. The Matt and Shane fans are also called Dogs. I feel like it was kind of a nod to them, like
I
Dogs.
I didn't even think of that.
That's how I always took it. I don't know if that ever crossed his mind, but that's how I took it.
He's like a rapper having like a bar mean like 6 different things.
That's right. Yeah. Or it's just one autistic asshole that does a comedy podcast and is like, everything has meaning. Who's to say?
Next we have Salt and Pepper. Salt and Pepper.
Oh, so this is the start of the closer.
Yes.
This snuck up on us quickly. Yeah. Like I said, great album. Check out the whole thing. We couldn't include all of it, obviously, but this to me is a great story. And I think a lot of people, not even necessarily in life, have copied this since it came out. But it's a great story that John Mulaney tells, again, about his childhood.
I want to tell you one story. This was the best meal I've ever had in my life, all right? This happened when I was 11 years old in Chicago, Illinois, where I grew up. And it took place at a little restaurant called the Salt and Pepper Diner, which was a family restaurant in the city. Yes, you know the Salt and Pepper Diner? It's a wonderful family restaurant in Chicago, which means that it caters mainly to teenagers and homeless schizophrenics. Now, I go into this place one day when I'm 11 with my best friend, John. And I should say that his name is also John. I'm not calling myself my own best friend. It's a separate human being. We walk into the Salt and Pepper Diner one day, and they had a jukebox there, all right? And the jukebox was 3 plays for $1. So we put in $7 and selected 21 plays of Tom Jones's What's New Pussycat. And then we ordered and waited.
I mean, just the perfect song to perpetrate this onto a diner. But this is what I'm talking about, where Mulaney, it's the perfect age. Like, I heard this when I was in college, and it's just the perfect age to still to feel that, where it's like you're still at an age where it's like I would want to do. If I heard this in my 30s, I might be like, "Oh, that's funny," but when you're 20, you're like, "I want to do this to someone today." Like I want to find a place with a jukebox and do this.
I was just gonna say you were at the age where you heard that and you went, "Well, I know what I'm doing tonight."
He's a genius.
Next, we have The Song.
Okay, yeah, so this is him talking more about the Tom Jones song.
Here's the thing about when What's New Pussycat plays over and over and over and over and over again. The second time it plays, your immediate thought is not, "Hey, someone's playing What's New Pussycat again." It's, "Hey, What's New Pussycat is a lot longer than I first thought." and it has like a dip in the middle. You know how some songs have a dip, like Guns N' Roses' November Rain? You're like, hey, November Rain's over. No, it's not. There's more. The third time it plays, you're thinking maybe someone's playing What's New Pussycat again. The fourth time it plays, you're thinking, whoa. Someone just played What's New Pussycat 4 times, or at least someone played it twice, and it's a really long song.
Just the way he's able to dip into your psychology, like to break it down in that way that people would be sitting there and thinking like, oh yeah, this is kind of a long song. Wait a second, hold on. Like he basically broke it down second by second and made you relate to it. Once again, even though that you're not there, you know.
It must be funny being in that diner. Like you look around, you're like, oh, who did this? And he's just like, like
him and John.
Yeah. But this is the reaction.
Okay.
So, the fifth time is the kicker. Now, we're watching the entire diner at this point. Most people have gotten wind as to what's going on. And we're staring at this one guy, and he's sitting in his booth, and his like hand is shaking while his stupid kids jump around, and like he's been onto us since the beginning. And he's staring at his coffee cup like this, and he has this look on his face like, oh, like he just got his 30-day chip from anger management. And he's staring like this, and the fourth play fades out. It's dead quiet. And then, I don't know if you know this, but the song begins very subtly. Wah, wah, what's new, pussycat? And the guy goes, God damn it! And pounds on the table, and silverware flies everywhere, and it was fantastic.
I hate to keep repeating myself, but like, can't you picture everyone in that diner? Like the way he's able to describe it to you in such a detail. And it's like, it's a dumb thing he did with his buddy when he's a kid, but he's telling it with the detail that you would recap like a bank heist, you know? Like it's the way that Ocean's 11 would be described to you. But it's just like really, if you break down what happened is we put a bunch of quarters into a jukebox and pick the same song over and over again. But he's able to make a meal out of it in such an entertaining way that is like truly impressive.
But we are at the closer.
All right. So this is the end of John's Salt and Pepper Diner story here.
But a word about my friend John and what a genius he was. Because when we were first up at the jukebox and we were punching in the What's New Pussycats, all right? I punched in about 7. And then John says to me, hey, wait. Before we drop in another What's New Pussycat, let's put in 1. It's not unusual.
Pause real quick. A criminal mastermind.
Yes.
I want to know what John grew up to do, because that is utterly brilliant.
He's probably his dealer.
To say, let's give him a little relief.
And that is when the afternoon went from good to great. After 7 What's New Pussycats in a row. Suddenly, it's not unusual, and the sigh of relief has swept through the diner. People were ecstatic. It was like the liberation of France. You know, for years, scientists have wondered, can you make grown men and women weep tears of joy by playing Tom Jones's It's Not Unusual? And the answer is yes, you can. As long as it is preceded by 7 What's New Pussycats. And on the other hand, when we went back... Holy shit. It's not unusual, fades out. It's dead quiet. Wah, bro, what's new, pussycat? People went fucking insane. No one could handle it. No one could handle it. And they were surrounded by this like seemingly indifferent staff, you know, that was just like, yep, same shit as always. My only wish is that one of the schizophrenics had stood up and been like, now you know. Now you know what it's like to live in my brain. They unplugged the jukebox after 11 plays. And that was the best meal I've ever had. Thank you very much, San Francisco. This was great. Thank you. Hope to see you again real soon. My name's John Mulaney. Have a good night.
Such a great story, and that's another. I didn't even realize this when I was grabbing clips. Another formula of Mulaney is he kind of ends on like his Bill Clinton story in The Comeback Kid. He has these kind of quick hits early on, and then ends with a longer story. I think that's kind of how Tosh actually. So didn't we talk about Tosh doing that as well? Where it's definitely John Mulaney has a formula. Like I said, if you watch him on Letterman, you will hear him talk about that formula in a way where like he's almost revealing too much. You're like, I didn't even want to know that's how you did it because you're a genius. But and I like I said, part of the reason I like albums, there's a nostalgia feel to it. Like you can hear people's glasses and plates clinking in the club. It feels like you're in a comedy club. Whereas now, and this is also a symptom of just comics getting bigger. But like now, any special that John Mulaney does is going to be recorded in at minimum a theater, if not a bigger venue.
Right.
So there's like a nice element like that as well. I mean, obviously,
you had to say his name at the end of the special.
Oh, this is when 2009. He might not have been a writer at SNL yet, or very new.
Right.
He was a writer on SNL when he recorded New in Town, but 2009, I don't know if he was even an SNL writer yet. So yeah, he was not a known guy at all. But like I said, for such at a young age like that, very impressive to be able to crush the way he did. Because I reference Joe List on here a lot, one of my favorite comedians ever. But his early stuff doesn't really grab me. Like I like his last 3 specials and maybe his last album. But like his real early stuff, it doesn't feel like the same guy. And I think that's the case with a lot of comics where early on you have to find your voice because most people are doing an impression of Dave Attell or Brian Regan or Mitch Hedberg or Bill Burr or Dane Cook even. Dane Cook and a lot of those people. So people are doing impressions of guys they saw do comedy. I think it's pretty rare to be a John Mulaney or a Shane Gillis where they're kind of always just who they are, and that works on stage somehow. So shout out to John Mulaney. He's had a heck of a career, and I assume we'll get a real boost out of this one,
This kid's got a bright future ahead.
Guys, go support the top part, buy it on iTunes. John could use it. But yeah, it is one I wanted to do. The reason I wanted to do this album also is because of all Mulaney's work, this might be the one you haven't listened to. Like all his other stuff's on Netflix pretty much. So if you haven't checked out the top part, I recommend you doing it in its entirety. So go check that out. But more importantly, check out blindmike.net if you wouldn't mind, because that's how this show keeps on moving. The more we grow, the more you guys support the show, the more eyeballs we get on it, the more it reaches people. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, leave 5 stars. Wherever you get podcasts, we're on all platforms. So make sure you support us. And then if you want to go the extra mile, become a member for as little as $5 a month to get early access and bonus content. If you wanted this episode a week ago, if you were like, man, I wish I was listening to this last week, it would have been great last week content. Well, then you can do that by being a Patreon or YouTube member. So make sure you do that. And we appreciate you for all that. All those links are at blindmike.net. And like I said, Craig's child has probably perished at this point. Probably no longer with us.
I do have to check.
So that is, I mean, listen, the kind of guy that Craig is, you got to go to verygoodshow.org and support this man. Because he has a funeral to pay for. He'll be a grieving father in a matter of hours. So
If you're listening to this,
I hope that's not. Good luck. I hope that doesn't come true.
if you're listening to this episode not on Patreon, new episode of Rubbed out now. Please go listen.
Yes, where eventually it's a true crime podcast. So eventually they'll be talking what Craig did to his child during this last 45 minutes here. But yeah, go support Craig. Rubbed Out, very good show. Check all that out. Verygoodshow.org. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the support, and we will talk to you next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.